Laughter exploded around the small family backyard, loud and mean. The scent of burnt charcoal and cheap barbecue smoke hung heavy in the warm air. My older brother, Kieran, stood up tall, holding a bottle of beer. He lifted it slightly, not really to toast, but to make a public show of my low status. His eyes found mine across the crowded picnic table, and his smile was a sneer hidden behind good manners. "Still renting that tiny shoebox, Tess? Honestly, it's amazing. Guess you'll always be just a temporary guest in someone else's home, won't you?" A wave of humiliating chuckles rolled over the small crowd of relatives. My cheeks instantly burned bright red. I gripped my plastic cup so hard the plastic nearly cracked under the pressure of my fingers. Then, my own mother had to add her disappointed voice. "Kieran is right, dear. You should really think about settling down and buying property, just like your successful brother. At least Kieran is focused on his financial future." The betrayal was raw and sharp. I met Kieran's eyes, whispering a fierce promise under my breath that only I could ever truly hear. "You are going to regret those mocking words someday, I swear it." My name is Tessa Monroe, and that horrible, embarrassing family barbecue was the very last day I tried to make any of them proud of me. I was 29 years old and working as a professional interior designer. I lived in a bright, cozy, two-bedroom apartment. I didn't own it, but I loved it and had made it my sanctuary. However, to my entire family, renting was basically the same thing as being a failure in life. My brother, Kieran, was the undisputed golden child. He was a real estate agent who had inherited my father's loud, confident voice, and unfortunately, his deep-seated arrogance. Kieran truly believed that real success was something you could easily see and loudly show off to your neighbors. He bought big things, like cars and houses, just to impress everyone around him. But I saw things differently. I believed that true success was much quieter than that. I thought it was something very strong and lasting that you had to build with your own hands, slowly, piece by difficult piece, from the ground up, in silence. There had always been this incredibly frustrating and unfair double standard in our family dynamics. I vividly remembered being a serious 16-year-old. I had spent countless weeks working late, using a complicated software program to design the perfect, functional layout for my small bedroom. When I finally showed the detailed plans to my father, he just gave me a quick, dismissive pat on the head and said, "That's cute, Tess. A nice little hobby." A few short months later, Kieran managed to sell his old, used Xbox gaming console for a profit of about $200 at a neighborhood yard sale. My parents didn't just praise him for it. They practically threw a small party. They called him a natural entrepreneur and spent weeks talking about his brilliant business mind to anyone who would listen. They never once seemed to truly see my passion, my endless hours of hard work, or my unique design talent. They treated my creativity like a simple game. But Kieran's every move, no matter how tiny, was treated like a monumental, important step in a brilliant career. They never really looked at me, but from the shadows, I was observing everything they did. The sharp cracks in my family's already weak opinion of me became impossible to ignore one day at a Sunday brunch. My mother was speaking at the top of her voice, practically shouting so that every person in the busy cafe could hear her bragging. She was detailing every expensive feature of Kieran's huge, beautiful new house, and loudly praising his quickly rising real estate career as if he were a guaranteed success story already. Then, she paused for a breath and finally mentioned me. The sudden, disappointing change in her tone was sharp and very clear. "Tessa is certainly creative, and she means well with her designing," my mother sighed heavily, looking down at her coffee cup with a pitying expression. "But she's just not quite there yet, you know. She really needs to find a more serious direction in life." That comment hit me hard. I felt a sudden, profound, and very cold sense of being completely invisible to my own blood relatives. Right there and then, I made a powerful, unbreakable resolve. If I couldn't ever manage to make them genuinely proud of my path, I would absolutely make sure that they were forced to stop their lives and quietly watch my success unfold before them. The final breaking point, the moment that almost made me completely give up on everything, occurred a few weeks later in my home. My small, beautiful rented apartment, the one Kieran always loudly mocked as a shoebox, had a disastrous, major leak in the bathroom ceiling. Water was pouring down hard, staining the paint, ruining a brand new rug and completely soaking a large stack of expensive design magazines. When I frantically called Kieran to tell him the bad news, he didn't offer sympathy. Instead, he just laughed loudly over the phone line. "Well, that's just the risk you take, little sister, when you refuse to actually own anything. You'd better go find a plumber quickly, or better yet, a landlord to complain to, not a real solution." His cruel words were like a heavy blow. I wanted so badly to collapse onto the wet floor and cry, but I didn't. Instead of crying, I grabbed my sketchbook and pen. I started furiously drawing, channeling all the pain and the feeling of being ruined into a completely new idea. The brilliant concept of taking old, abandoned, forgotten, and truly broken architectural spaces and transforming them into something incredibly beautiful and perfectly new. I found a listing online, an abandoned downtown building, perfect for my idea. To escape the mess in my apartment, I started working late into the night at a quiet cafe near the downtown core. I had all my rough sketches for the abandoned building spread out on the tiny table, trying to bring some kind of order to the wild ideas for renovation. While I was completely focused, a well-dressed man, clearly successful and probably in his late 40s, stopped right next to my table as he was leaving. "Those architectural lines are very unique and quite interesting," he said, his voice deep, calm, and clearly respectful. He asked me genuinely about the drawings. I eagerly explained my full vision for creating a fully sustainable, multi-use design studio that would carefully preserve the building's historic charm while bringing the old architecture back to vibrant life. He listened to every word, nodding thoughtfully. His name was Eamon Vale, and he was an influential investor known for funding bold, new creative spaces. He didn't mock my ambition, he saw the potential. He gently slid a thick, professional business card across the table toward me. "Call me Tessa Monroe, when you are truly ready to own something real, not just keep renting it." I didn't sleep at all that entire night. My mind was racing, fueled by caffeine and sheer, burning ambition. I worked nonstop, constructing a beautiful, professional, and visually stunning pitch deck. I poured every ounce of my recent anger, my passion, and my late-night ideas into presenting my business plan. The next morning, feeling nervous but ready, I presented my complete vision to Eamon Vale in his towering office. I held nothing back. I showed him the detailed plans for a fully sustainable, open-concept studio space, custom-built for independent, up-and-coming designers. I explained how it would be a green building, using only recycled materials, and designed to maximize natural light and energy efficiency. When I was done, the quiet in his office felt heavy and huge. Eamon slowly leaned way back in his expensive leather chair and quietly studied my face for what felt like an eternity. Finally, a slow, confident smile spread across his face. "You definitely have guts, Tessa Monroe, and a genuinely brilliant, profitable plan. Let's absolutely build this thing together." He reached his hand out to officially shake mine, and in that powerful moment, I knew my whole life was about to pivot dramatically. Within the next week, I had officially signed the partnership deal with Eamon, creating my brand new company, Monroe Interiors, LLC. The legal paperwork felt thick and heavy in my hands, confirming that I was now the co-owner and the principal designer of a major renovation project. The entire endeavor had to be kept a complete secret. I couldn't tell my cautious mother, I couldn't tell any of my skeptical relatives, and I absolutely could not tell Kieran. This wasn't because I wanted to be sneaky. It was purely because I needed to protect my fragile dream until it became too strong and too solid to be broken by their usual harsh judgment and their endless, worried questions. I didn't want their constant input or their doubt hanging over me. My small, dedicated team and I quietly started the long, difficult process of renovating the massive, abandoned downtown property. I wanted my first truly great, lasting success to arrive in total, utter silence, so that when it was finally time to speak, the result would be so loud and clear that it would be impossible for anyone to ignore. At yet another mandatory and boring family dinner, Kieran was absolutely unbearable. He spent the entire meal aggressively talking about the expensive, custom-made light fixtures he had installed in his new house and how much enormous equity he was quickly building up. He spoke like he was the only person in the world who understood money and success. Then, He focused his attention directly on me and snickered, loud enough for all the guests to hear him clearly. "So, little Tess, what's the latest? Are you still renting that cramped place? Or have you finally saved up enough cash for a tiny down payment on a broom closet in a bad neighborhood?" I forced my lips into a thin smile, carefully hiding the amazing truth that was bubbling like a tiny volcano inside me. "Oh, I'm saving, Kieran," I lied smoothly, meeting his arrogant, mocking gaze without blinking once. Under the table, I could feel the sharp, crisp edge of the architectural blueprints that I had secretly tucked away in my purse. They were the detailed plans for my massive, beautiful building, a truly concrete, expensive secret that was quickly taking its stunning shape, just a few blocks away from where we were sitting at that very moment. The following few months of my life were a total blur of complete exhaustion and nonstop, intense work. It was a constant, grueling, and difficult montage. I was working around the clock every day, constantly meeting with pushy contractors, spending many late nights painting huge sections of the walls myself to keep costs down, arguing endlessly with the electricians, and painstakingly learning all the complex rules of business finance through sheer, difficult trial and error. I was entirely hands-on, dealing with every single tiny problem that popped up. My days stretched into long, 12-hour shifts, and my nights were short and disturbed, often filled with the sharp smell of fresh sawdust and paint thinner. Every single mistake I made was a painful bruise to my ego and a costly lesson learned the very hard way. But with every new bruise I collected, I had physical proof. It was clear, undeniable proof that I was actually in the fight, that I was actively building something real with my own two hands and my own brilliant mind, and that I was not just talking endlessly about my dreams like so many others did. One afternoon, completely out of the blue, my mother decided to visit my rented apartment without calling first. She found me sitting completely still on the living room floor, surrounded by piles of various fabric samples and covered head to toe in plaster dust, totally drained after a particularly rough 13-hour workday at the construction site. She didn't look proud of my hard work. She looked only deeply worried and profoundly disappointed in my life choices. "Tessa, honey, just look at the state you're in," she sighed heavily, shaking her head slowly with deep pity. "You should honestly just quit this crazy, exhausting business idea and go marry someone stable, like a reliable doctor or a nice lawyer. Someone who can actually take care of you properly." Her words felt like a heavy, suffocating weight pressing directly down on my chest. I had finally had enough of her constant doubt. I stood up quickly, brushing the dust off my paint-splattered jeans, and looked her straight and firmly in the eye. "Or maybe, Mom," I said, my voice shaking with conviction, "just maybe I will be the one who becomes completely stable on my own terms." The sharp emotional clash between us ended in a long, uncomfortable, and heavy silence, but I absolutely refused to back down from my decision. The pressure on the project only increased dramatically as the months passed. 6 months into the complete renovation, Eamon Vale, my influential investor, called me into his enormous, glass-walled office for a very serious and direct talk. He wasn't smiling at all this time. "Tessa," he said, his voice completely flat and professional, "we are now 6 long months behind our original schedule, and the construction budget is running dangerously thin. The financial numbers are simply not adding up, and our initial capital is quickly running out." He stopped speaking, allowing the harsh, cold truth of the situation to sink deeply into me. "You urgently need to secure a significant tenant soon. Either the next major, custom design element you install sells the entire space to a high-end client, or I will have no choice but to cut my losses, and we will be completely finished. Do you fully understand me?" I stared back at him, my heart pounding loudly in my chest, a terrible, cold feeling of panic creeping into my stomach. I went straight back to my unfinished, dusty studio that night and simply stared at the large, empty space. I knew my first design plan wasn't good enough, and without hesitation, I started tearing it all apart with my own hands, ready to begin the entire design process again. I survived on sheer will and black coffee for the next 2 grueling weeks, completely redesigning the core internal structure of the building. I threw away all the complicated, expensive, and unnecessary plans and started completely fresh with a simple, brilliant concept: minimalist luxury, achieved entirely by using gorgeous, high-quality salvaged and fully recycled materials. I incorporated old, beautiful wood from a demolished warehouse, reclaimed metals, and huge panes of clear industrial glass to create a space that felt both perfectly high-end and deeply committed to environmental sustainability. It was a design concept that felt truly groundbreaking and utterly fresh. The moment the main construction was finally completed and the sophisticated custom lights were turned on for the first time, the space was breathtakingly beautiful. It was finally perfect. A small but very influential local design magazine, well known for showcasing new, talented architects, heard about the unusual and stunning look of the completed space. They called me immediately, demanding a detailed interview about the unique architecture and the beautiful, elegant interior design choices. The magazine article was published a week later, and much to my surprise, it went immediately semi-viral across all social media platforms. The headline was simple, direct, and very catchy. "The renter who reinvented downtown, architect's bold, sustainable new studio." It was my very first major public recognition, and it felt like a huge reward for all the years of quiet struggle. The article clearly mentioned the building's prime downtown location, and most importantly, the new company name, Monroe Interiors. Kieran, of course, spotted the article immediately popping up all over his professional social media feed. He instantly texted me a quick, characteristically dismissive message. "Cute little hobby, Tess. Glad all your apartment decorating is finally working out for you somehow." I had to forcibly press my lips together to physically suppress a huge, triumphant laugh. I typed out a simple, measured reply. "It's much more than a hobby, Kieran." I carefully hid my satisfied smirk as I hit the send button. He still had absolutely no idea. He didn't know that my little apartment decorating was actually the entire stunning, multi-story office building sitting beautifully right in the middle of the downtown business district. Not yet, anyway. At the same time as my own professional rise, quiet, worried rumors started to spread rapidly through the family grapevine that Kieran's real estate firm was in serious financial trouble. The highly competitive housing market had unexpectedly turned very hard and fast, and he had overleveraged himself financially on several huge, risky residential deals. He was now struggling desperately to land some significant, high-end commercial clients to completely save his quickly sinking business. I saw him at a distant cousin's birthday party, and for the first time ever, I saw a flicker of real, desperate fear in his usually arrogant eyes, even though he was working hard to mask it. To hide his growing panic and save face, he started bragging even louder and more aggressively than usual to everyone around him. "I've got these massive, unbelievable listings coming up soon, the kind of deals that will easily set me up for the rest of my life." He boasted, loudly, clearly trying to convince himself as much as the rest of us family members. His constant, desperate need to loudly advertise his own professional success only made him look weaker and much more fragile under all the expensive layers of his facade. Just a few days later, I was stepping out to grab a quick lunch when I clearly heard a familiar, overconfident voice on a very loud mobile phone call nearby. It was Kieran. I instantly froze in my tracks, my body tensing as I strained to listen to every word. "Yes, this highly exclusive listing is for a top-tier luxury design office space downtown. It just officially hit the market this week," he was loudly saying into his phone. "My incredibly wealthy client is going to absolutely love this specific space. It's truly one of a kind. I'm scheduled to tour the property with them first thing next week. This is absolutely going to be my largest, biggest commission check ever. I guarantee it." My stomach completely dropped, and a rush of cold panic washed over me. There was only one beautiful, new, high-end, luxury design office that had recently hit the highly competitive downtown market with so much intense professional buzz. I knew it instantly, even though he hadn't mentioned the actual street name. He was talking about my building, the very building that I legally owned, the one he had absolutely no idea I was even remotely connected to. I immediately rushed back to my new, sleek office and quickly alerted my small, incredibly loyal staff. "Kieran Monroe is scheduled to arrive here to tour the building next week with a very important, high-end client," I told them all, keeping my voice very low and completely professional. You must treat him exactly like any other professional real estate agent. Do not, under any circumstances whatsoever, say a single word about me being the actual owner of this building. We are going to let him discover that painful truth entirely on his own terms." My staff exchanged knowing, excited, and conspiratorial glances. We all worked together, spending the rest of the day getting the entire studio absolutely perfect. We polished every single chrome surface until it gleamed, meticulously arranged every piece of designer furniture, and made sure the sophisticated lighting was absolutely flawless. On the huge, beautiful front glass entrance door, etched in simple, elegant gold letters, was our company name, Monroe Intriors. He would only see my name, written in large, clear letters, when it was already much too late for him to do anything about it. The day of the scheduled tour felt strangely like a mix of an incredibly exciting Christmas morning and a terrifying, crucial first day of high school, all rolled into one nervous feeling. Kieran arrived punctually with his two clients, a serious, very well-dressed, elderly couple who looked quite wealthy. He confidently strode into the lobby with his usual, excessive level of obnoxious self-assurance. "As you can clearly see right away, this is unequivocally one of the finest commercial properties I have ever had the genuine pleasure of showing you to," he was loudly saying. Beaming with completely misplaced pride. He was already acting like the sale was secured and his commission was guaranteed. The lovely, highly professional receptionist, who was completely aware of the secret plan, smiled sweetly at the group. "Welcome. Please, just one moment. Let me go and quickly get the owner of the property for you so she can personally answer any final technical questions you might have before we proceed." Kieran nodded dismissively, completely oblivious to the trap he was walking into, and quickly adjusted the knot of his expensive silk tie. The large, elegant glass door leading from the reception area to the main studio slid smoothly open. I calmly stepped out, completely composed and radiating quiet confidence, looking my brother straight in his eyes. "Welcome to my office, Kieran." Kieran instantly froze in a strange, statuesque pose right in the middle of the beautiful, minimalist reception area. His overly confident, easy smile completely vanished from his face, replaced by a look of sheer, painful disbelief. For a moment, his mouth hung slightly open, like a small, broken machine. He slowly looked at me, then his eyes darted to the elegant, gold-etched words clearly displayed on the glass door, Monroe Intriors. Then he looked back at my face, confusion and panic mixing in his expression. "Wait, what? No, this can't be. Tessa, this entire massive building is legally yours." The words were stuck deep in his throat, choked out in a panicked whisper. I felt a wonderful, calming, cold sense of victory wash over me. I simply nodded once, my expression perfectly graceful and completely unwavering. I didn't shout or gloat or rub it in. I simply walked past his frozen body to politely greet his stunned clients, extending my hand to shake theirs. Then, I turned back to look at my absolutely speechless brother and delivered the powerful final truth with a soft, even, professional voice. "I guess it turns out that all that time I spent simply renting actually worked out pretty well for me in the end, didn't it, Kieran?" The crushing, loud, uncomfortable silence that instantly fell over the room was far more powerful and punishing than any shouted argument could have ever been. Kieran's clients immediately exchanged long, very awkward glances with each other, their faces betraying their shock. They had just realized a horrible, deeply embarrassing professional fact. The real estate agent, who was trying so hard to pitch them this multi-million-dollar luxury office building, had absolutely no idea who the actual owner was, let alone that the owner was his own younger sister. His complete lack of basic professionalism and even simple market knowledge was fully exposed right there in front of his biggest potential clients. The entire lucrative deal died instantly, not because the building wasn't perfect, but purely because of Kieran's public, crushing humiliation. The clients politely and quickly excused themselves, thanking me profusely and pointedly ignoring Kieran entirely. My brother stood there, staring down at the perfectly polished concrete floor for a long, painful minute, his shoulders slumped in absolute defeat. He finally stormed out of the building, his face a shocking, dark shade of crimson, completely defeated and utterly humiliated. The shocking, dramatic story, as big news always does, found its way straight back to the entire family network almost immediately. The very first worried phone call I received came from my mother that same afternoon. Her voice was audibly shaking with a strange, confusing mix of pure shock, deep confusion, and a hint of clear, undeniable pride that I had genuinely never heard from her before. "Tessa, what on earth is actually going on?" "I just spoke to your Aunt Carol, and she is absolutely speechless. This enormous building downtown. Is it truly, really yours? Why on earth did you never tell any of us about this huge success?" Her question was finally an honest one, but it also held the key to the entire painful history between us. I took a deep, steadying breath, standing perfectly straight in the middle of my large, beautiful, custom-designed office, looking out proudly at the busy, moving city I now had a permanent financial stake in. "I didn't tell you, Mom," I replied calmly, my voice completely honest. "Because the truth is, you only ever truly listen to me when I succeed. You completely ignored me for years when I was just quietly trying." There was a long, ringing, deeply meaningful silence on the other end of the phone line as she processed the painful truth. The same dramatic week that Kieran's professional reputation and life hit rock bottom, mine unexpectedly soared to new heights. A major local news outlet, the very one that every member of my extended family read and followed religiously, published a massive, detailed feature story about the building's innovative design and my success. The full-page headline was simply impossible for anyone to miss. "From renter to real estate owner, the woman redefining sustainable design and commercial investment in the city." The article included a stunning, professional photo of me standing confidently in the breathtaking glass-walled lobby of Monroe Interiors. Every single member of my family, from my cautious aunts and skeptical uncles to my deeply disappointed mother, saw that story. Every single person who had ever loudly or quietly mocked me for living in a rented apartment was now forced to stop and quietly watch my completely unexpected, poised, and utterly undeniable rise to major success. All their years of constant doubt and continuous gossip had only served to fuel the quiet, fierce fire I needed to silently build my empire. A few agonizing, quiet weeks later, Kieran showed up unexpectedly at my office building again. He walked in, completely without his usual swagger or confidence, his expensive baseball cap clutched tightly and nervously in his hands. He looked small, tired, and deeply defeated. My assistant led him back to my large, beautiful private office. This time, he didn't bother to brag or try to make any jokes. He simply stood there, staring down intently at the perfectly polished floor. "Tess," he finally mumbled, his voice sounding thick and very quiet, "I truly messed up. I was a complete jerk to you, and I'm honestly sorry for all of it. The real truth is, I was so incredibly jealous of you, even when you were renting, because you were genuinely doing what you loved every single day. I just hated where I was in my own life, and I aggressively took all of that frustration out on you." I listened to his quiet, painful confession, giving him the respect and space he had never once given me. I sighed, the old, intense anger completely gone. "Kieran, you honestly never needed to try and tear me down so aggressively just to feel tall yourself. You just simply needed to build your own thing with the same effort." Then he took a deep, shaky breath and finally asked the difficult question I knew was coming all along. Can I please work for you, Tess? I'll do anything." I looked across the desk at my brother, and I gave him the only true, honest answer. No. My mother, finally, came to pay a proper, personal visit to my new studio. She didn't come this time to publicly apologize or to boast about me to others. She came completely alone. She walked slowly and thoughtfully through the stunning, quiet space, gently touching the warm, beautifully reclaimed wood and looking up at the incredibly high, arching ceilings. When she finally reached my private, glass-walled office, her eyes were visibly wet with unshed tears. She didn't say anything negative or even overly positive at first. She just looked around at the clear, undeniable evidence of my intense passion, my unique talent, and my hard-won, completely self-made success. Then she looked directly at me, her expression completely emotional and profoundly honest. "Tessa," she finally whispered, her voice cracking slightly with emotion, Your father would have been so incredibly proud of the amazing, determined woman you have become today. I looked out through the glass walls of my own company, the beautiful, modern place I had built entirely from the dirt up with my own 2 hands. I smiled, a real, genuine, easy smile this time. I think he would have been proud, Mom. I truly do. It was a quiet, final moment of genuine closure, free from any vengeance. I stayed late that evening, long after every single member of my staff had already gone home for the night. I walked slowly through the quiet halls and carefully locked up my huge, incredible office building as the beautiful sunset was casting long, deep, golden shadows across the empty downtown street below. I walked slowly over to the main glass entrance doors, my hand resting for one last moment on the cool glass, right next to my company name etched in gold, Monroe Interiors. I looked out at all the thousands of city lights turning on, the bustling, vibrant, beautiful world I was now undeniably and permanently a vital part of. I used to spend years thinking that achieving true revenge meant simply proving every single person wrong, especially Kieran and the rest of my skeptical family. I had yearned for years for them to finally admit their mistakes and apologize. But now, standing there alone in my triumph, I finally understood the full, peaceful truth. True, lasting success, the kind that truly matters most in life, isn't really about spending your time making them wrong. It is simply, elegantly, and powerfully about proving yourself right. The camera slowly and deliberately panned out over the sleek, modernist glass building, my name glowing powerfully in simple, elegant gold letters, a permanent, shining fixture on the ever-changing city skyline.